Welcome back to The Light Speakers, a new novel by Tammy Hedge. Chapter 2, Cora. The forest was a hive of activity. In the center of it all, calm and serene, was Cora. She looked over the preparations and thought about how lucky she was to be surrounded by such love. It was always this way. Creature, animal, or human, she loved them all intensely. And she was still a little surprised at how they all loved her in return. It was so sweet of them to be working so hard to make her special day as perfect as possible. In just a few hours it would be official. She and Monica would be bound together. Cora thought back to the first time she had met him. Monica wandered from the temple and was sitting under a tree, lost in thought. She watched him for a little while from the branch she was sitting on. Cora always loved it when trees would let her climb them and view her world from up high. As she watched him, she asked the tree, "Who is this boy that is in a world of his own?" The tree whispered back, "He is a temple boy, blessed and burdened." "Burdened?" she asked. "His blessing is his burden," the tree replied. Now she was even more curious, but she knew better than to ask the tree more. Trees didn't like to engage in long conversations, but what they said was true and usually left her puzzled. She found that the best way to work out what they meant was to find out for herself. She climbed down from her perch and decided to talk to the boy and figure out how a blessing could be a burden. Cora understood blessings. She always understood what nature was saying to her. She was used to having long conversations with the animals and short ones with the trees. How could that possibly be a burden? As Cora sat down in front of this strange boy, he didn't even notice that she was there. "How is a blessing a burden?" she asked rather bluntly. Monica was startled from his thoughts and looked at her confused. "What? Who are you? What did you say?" he asked. "How is a blessing a burden?" she repeated. "Blessings are nice if you understand them," he said. "But they aren't very nice when they leave you all confused and they make other people avoid you or mad at you or scared of you." "The tree said your blessing is your burden," she said. "Wait, a tree spoke to you? That's impossible. Trees do not talk," he said. "Of course trees speak. All of nature can speak. You have to know how to listen." "I never met anyone that could hear trees talk. Are you sure you didn't just imagine it?" "Most of the people in the forest can speak with trees." Cora didn't understand why it was so hard for this boy to understand. "So why is your blessing a burden?" she asked. Monica looked down at the ground and ran his fingers through the dirt. He whispered, "I can hear people's secrets in their minds." "Ooh, that's a rare one," exclaimed Cora. "I've heard that runs in families. Can your parents do that too?" He looked up in shock. "You aren't afraid of me?" he asked. "Why would I be scared of you?" "The people in my village were afraid of me. Even my parents dumped me at the temple because they were afraid of me." She spent the rest of that day learning about Monica's gift and how he struggled to learn to use it properly. She in turn talked about her gift, and how here in the forest everyone was so different that she didn't feel strange at all. Despite being 6 years old, that day she knew she found her soulmate. "Cora, Cora, 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 Cora," spoke a rabbit at her feet. "Doesn't it look wonderful? Are you ready? Oh no, you aren't ready. Isn't it time for you to be dressed? Why aren't you dressed yet?" Rabbits were notorious for speaking too fast and too long. "Oh my, you're right. What would I ever do without you, my little friend? Thank you so much for making sure that I'm on time," said Cora. She took one last look around the clearing. Everything was really coming together nicely. The sacred circle was swept to perfection. The canopy was beautifully decorated with juniper, yarrow, dill, heliotrope, and white chrysanthemums, and the pathway was strewn with ferns and oak. Each was chosen by the trees as ingredients for a successful and prosperous union. The seating was arranged, and a few of the ancient ones were already starting to arrive. Some traveled the roads for days and were being greeted with soft cushions and refreshments. The long tables were ready for the priests to lay the banquet, and the altar was ready for the elements needed for the ritual. Cora was positive they covered everything on the list, so she set off to ready herself. The Sybils arrived to help her dress. They were such an important part of her life. They encouraged her first steps, clothed and fed her. They taught her to not only know each plant and stone by its name, but also how they could each be used to protect and to heal. They helped her to hone her skills, and they taught her that her gifts were not to be feared, but to be embraced. She was so lucky to have so many raise her and love her. They sprinkled her hair with jasmine and presented her with a beautiful lotus to carry. The eldest decorated her hands and feet with the ancient protections and blessings. Cora always felt loved, but today her heart was swimming in it. The only thing missing was Monaco. She wiped a tear from her eye and hugged each and every Sibyl. Now she was ready. The candles were lit and the fireflies were sparkling in the trees. The sound of a gentle harp, accompanied by the serene chorus of the crickets, signaled that it was time for the ceremony to begin. Cora took her position. As she gazed at those gathered, she was warmed to see so many faces she knew. As her eyes scanned the guests, she noticed a stranger she had never seen such a strange woman. The woman was dressed from head to toe in black. Her dress had so many scarves hanging from it that they seemed like spider legs falling from her shoulders. It made Cora shiver for a moment. Finally, her eyes found who she was searching for. She could see Monaco, resplendent in white. With his dark hair and bronzed skin, he looked like a handsome prince coming to carry her away. Her heart skipped a beat, and she reminded herself to breathe. Well, here we go, she thought. A gong pealed out, calling the guests to order. A silence fell upon the clearing. The priests began the prayers. These would bless the couple and sanctify them. Cora was thankful that they had accepted the union. It was a rare thing for a son of the temple and a daughter of the forest to find each other, and it was rarer still for them to be allowed to pledge their love to one another. Next came the Sibyls. Each in turn bestowed a sacred charm of blessing or protection. Monaco's blessing had endeared him immediately to the Sibyls. They were impressed and wondered why he was sent to the temple and not to them. But it hadn't mattered. They saw him in their visions as the perfect partner for Cora. Cora was surrounded by love, and she felt it deeply. She snuck a side glance at Monaco. He was grinning from ear to ear, and his crystal blue eyes were sparkling. He snuck a glance at her, too, and as their eyes met, they almost started to giggle. Cora prayed they would always be this happy. The next part of the ceremony was the most sacred. They were led to the canopy and turned back to back. This was to symbolize their looking back on their lives as single individuals. They were expected to reflect and be thankful as they left their old lives behind. The curtains around the canopy were closed. They were alone. Here, in the pale light, when they were ready, they would turn and face each other. Here, they would share their first kiss. As she reflected on her past, she noticed that the light seemed to be fading and a mist was forming around them. She wondered at the magic that must be happening. She was ready. She turned to face Monaco, but he wasn't there. She was facing a tree. Where was he? What had happened? She suddenly realized that it wasn't Monaco that was missing, it was her. She was deep in the forest, and the mist was getting so dark that she could barely see. Was this a test? How were they supposed to find each other in this thick darkness? Cora regained her composure. This was her home, and she knew it well. She closed her eyes for a moment and focused on her breath. She called out silently, "Forest that raised me since my birth, help me find my love." She thought of only Monaco. She pictured his face and listened to her heartbeat. She slowly opened her eyes. In the distance, she could barely see a faint light. That must be him. The forest would help her find her way to him. She walked slowly, never taking her eyes from the light. She wasn't afraid. Step by step, she got closer. Step by step, the light became brighter. When Cora reached the glow, she was surprised to find it was a tree. From the feel of its bark, she knew it was one of the most ancient in the forest. The glow came from a spot near the roots. Cora placed her hand on it. She could feel warmth emanating from the spot. She closed her eyes again. "Help me find my love, most ancient and blessed of the forest, for you know all and see all," she whispered. She felt the spot beneath her hand begin to pulse in time with her own heartbeat. Slowly it began to move. She did not move her hand, but stayed completely still. When the movement stopped, she opened her eyes. There was now an opening in the tree, and her hand was inside. She could feel something. It was warm and comforting, and yet solid. She grasped it in her hand and slowly removed it from the tree. It was a necklace. She marveled at it. The pendant in the center was shaped like a heart, and the heart was glowing. Cora didn't know why, but she knew she was supposed to put it on. As soon as she had laid it around her neck, the mist disappeared, and she was back inside the canopy. She was disoriented and confused. Monica was just turning around, and it seemed she had never been gone. He caught her as she fainted. "Help!" he shouted. In the ensuing chaos, no one noticed a large spider escaping from under the curtain. I'm glad that you could join me for another chapter of my book, The Light Speakers. It's available on Amazon.com. It's available in paperback, and it's also available on Kindle. In the next couple of days, I should be coming out with Chapter 3 for you to listen to. And I'm hoping that if you have any questions about the book, that you'll feel free to reach out and let me know. You can always reach me at www.hedgerowart.com or on Facebook at Hedgerow Art.